going to commence and begin. So introductions, I think we kind of got this out of the way. In the room we have Luis Wong, CTO of ICOE and the California K-12 High-Speed Network, Ms. Terry Sanders, myself, and we do believe that we're going to be joined by additional participants from the California Department of Education who may be able to provide some additional insight into this entire process. For the majority of these slides, you will notice at the bottom of the screen, you will have some links, so you can write those down. That's going to take you either directly to our website, to the Fluid Review system. You can access our phone number or our email list where we can respond to questions that way. So if you haven't seen those before, they are available to you throughout the remainder of today's presentation. In terms of what we're looking at doing today, we're going to try to go through this background process. We're going to look at eligibility, priorities, next steps. We're going to look at the process that we're undertaking. We'll look at ranking and funding, awards and engineering resources, and then Q&A at the end of this. In terms of background, some of you may be somewhat familiar with this, others less so. But this was obviously included in SB 852. These are one-time funds of $26.7 million, which are going to be dedicated to districts and school sites across the state of California, with the hope of increasing or enhancing their network connectivity on the last mile. And the purpose of this is really to help with the successful implementation of the 2015 CASP assessment. We are very aware, obviously, based on our, research and things like that across the state, that there are several locations which are either underconnected or which, suffered maybe a lot of hardship in terms of trying to roll this test out. And so because of this, these funds were established and essentially earmarked for this purpose. Stakeholders in this process have included the California Department of Education, the Governor's Office, the Department of Finance, California K-12 High-Speed Network, CENIC, the what I mentioned, the State Board of Education, I already said that, and several other groups. We've been working with California county offices of education across the state, and we've had ongoing conversations with our working committees and groups. So we've tried to be as inclusive in this process and try to engage as many folks as we can. So that we can either identify what we need to or make adjustments that we think are needed that we may have possibly, avoided or overseen. Sorry about that. In terms of who is eligible for funding, all public school districts, COEs, and district-funded charter schools who are unable to administer the computer-based CASP due to very low internet capacity. This is who it's intended for. We have received questions that have come in regarding, does this cover internal connections? And the easy answer is no. So this is for those folks who lack the required external connection to actually engage and implement this test in a fashion that's not going to do damage to the site, to the district, so that they're having to shut down operations, essential operations. And that's essentially what we're trying to avoid. So if your site has a good external connection, but your issue is lack of wireless or lack of physical space or lack of devices, this essentially is not intended for you. School sites must have a CDS code or be affiliated with a site that does. There are instances in which there may be some external site off the campus that is still affiliated with the campus, which we may be trying to reach. So they may have some programmatic focus that may be not associated on-site with the campus itself. Grants are intended to be non-competitive, and LEAs may apply for multiple school sites. The only caveat to that is you have to apply or submit information for each school site. Essentially, if you in your district have 10 or 15 sites that you believe are eligible, then we're going to need submissions for each one of those. And that's going to include the pre-validation / site information form, which we'll cover in a short while, as well as any other validation steps that we're asking you to complete. So, for each step, you're going to have to resubmit for each one, essentially. A few of our colleagues set up some really good priority charts. Priority 1 is essentially intended for this. Those who are constantly in this process of either loading, they have a very slow connection, and we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to make it, so again, so that we're really making it beneficial for the students when they're taking these exams. Priority 1 is going to be given to schools that are unable to administer the 2015 online CASP and are essentially unable to improve their internet connection due to certain conditions. Things like lack of broadband infrastructure, they're in a hard-to-serve area, maybe geographically isolated, or there's a lack of service options from service providers. A couple of examples is, the school may not have administered the test due to inadequate last-mile connectivity. And a second example would include the school administered the test, but they had to transport students to an off-site location. So, if any of you were in this scenario where, let's say, you had to move kids to a different campus or to a different site so that you could actually participate in the CASP or what was considered the Smarter Balance field test, again, this is essentially what we're going to categorize as priority 1. So again, we're looking at those that are kind of at the surface level in terms of, or at the root level, whichever way you're looking at this in terms of need. So again, we're avoiding those things such as wireless issues or internal connections. Priority 2 is going to be given to schools that have low capacity and have limited options to improve their connections. One of the things that we have been talking about is scalability. So how scalable is your connection in the future, in the very near future, for example, to be able to conduct these tests? Some examples is, let's say your school administered the field test, but you did that, but you had to shut down all or essentially all of your essential online activities, including business functions and emails. So this is what you would call a priority 2 case. If a school administered the test, but there was only a limited amount of students that could test at one time due to the bandwidth, that is also going to fall under priority 2. So keep in mind that we're not saying that you couldn't test because of devices or physical space. You couldn't test because you just didn't have the connection to be able to do it. That's essentially what's going to be qualified as a priority 2 here.
Yeah, and Eddie, this is Luis, and to add, I think that we also are looking at sites that have this marginal capacity in place and would really have as well limited options to expand, that they've basically tapped out the current infrastructure that they have, and similar to the priority 1 sites, they have very limited capacity to increase to the next level. So that's an important thing to note as we're looking at this for priority 2 sites.
Another example, the school administered the test but didn't have capacity for the future, in this case the 2015, the actual full implementation. Maybe, for example, the rollout is going to increase, or maybe you've had a growth in enrollment that is now stressing your network, or there's severe contention on the network based on a variety of factors or variables. Those are things we're looking at considering under priority 2. The last example is it's sufficient in the short term, but it's going to restrict the testing environment based on some of these variables, things like computing devices. So as you add more in and now you're at a higher capacity or you're maxing it out, then essentially we're looking at, well, and if it's not scalable, now we're looking at what potential options we could provide. Okay, so these are our examples for priority 2. Some ineligible scenarios: school has adequate last mile but lacks internal network capacity, adequate last mile but has limited wireless, not a sufficient number of devices, or you have the ability to scale up. You have fiber installed at your sites, and if that is the case, then essentially, you wouldn't be eligible for these funds. So we are seeing a couple of questions come in, about having fiber access and things like that. Those are the types of things that we're looking at, and we're trying to avoid. We don't want you to essentially run through this process when you may or may not qualify. So we're trying to kind of sift out who and who doesn't fit into these priority criteria.
And let me interject something. The fact finding that we undertook was to reach out to county, one part of it was to reach out to county offices and ask them where they knew about sites having problems. So they helped us identify sites that had problems. And you may have gotten onto the original list and have an adequate connection out, but your COE collected information that you had difficulties testing. You went on the list to take the next step. one of the purposes of this webinar is to, you know, arrest any effort on your part if you look at the, you know, the rest of the story and determine, I have a problem, but I'm not in one of the covered scenarios. I'm not one of those sites with the last mile as my problem. So,
and another thing to interject here is that when this opportunity came from the leadership in Sacramento, is that there's a recognition that the funds available for this grant are really not going to be sufficient to cover all the needs in California. This is really a first start to try to get the most needy sites, and that is really to help them with this connection piece that goes from the school site down to either their district office or to their county office of education, and have really no options to, or very limited options to increase that capacity.
In terms of next steps, where we're at right now, and we'll talk about some of the timelines a few slides down, but essentially right now we're asking that all schools that deem themselves as potential, you know, eligible candidates are going to have to fill out what we're calling a self-nomination / site information form. And you're going to do this, the website is, actually, this is incorrect. There shouldn't be a .org there. It should be k12hsn .fluidreview.com. So we need to correct that. And again, it's at the bottom of your screen on other slides. But essentially, we're going to have every site kind of nominate themselves or provide site information that's going to allow us to then categorize them into priorities or ineligible sites based on things like your connection, based on how or whether you conducted the test and with what deficiencies or effectiveness. After that's done, if a site is deemed eligible, applicants are going to receive a request that indicates, you know, something along the lines of a full validation, and they're going to have to submit an additional form. That form is going to be much more detailed. We're going to take into account other factors, and to a certain degree, we're going to look at what information we can get to begin potentially engineering solutions for those sites that actually make it through and are, you know, end up at the high end of the ranking set scale. Afterwards, confirmed applicants would revisit this Fluid Review site. Again, that link is incorrect. You don't need the .org or the / there. And you would fill out the longer validation form. Eligible school sites will then be scored and ranked, and then announcements will be made after review by the California Department of Ed and the State Board of Education. One thing that we want you to be aware of is awardees are going to need to accept the funds and provide signed assurances as well as a letter of agency during this process. Particularly during the validation round, one of the factors is you will need to include an LOA with your validation submission if you're in the full validation round.
Yeah, and let me touch bases on that. I think it's actually a very important step. As we move forward with procurement processes and trying to best leverage the subsidy programs such as E-rate, we definitely have a need to have certain documentation in place before we can even consider the site for going through the engineering process and the procurement cycles. So some of the considerations are, you know, the site has to fill go through the online system, make sure everything passes through the pre-validation, the validation process. Then we will have some other requirements as well as having a signed letter of agency, which is the document that allows K12HSN and our partners as well that are part of this process to be able to go out to bid on the district's behalf. It's also important, as Eddie noted, some assurances. It's an expectation and part of the budget, the language that the school districts will assume responsibility of ongoing cost. So certainly we understand that the sites need to understand what that cost is going to be before committing to receiving funds from the grant. So those are all the things that get further along the line and getting a little more nitty-gritty in the process. But it's important to note. In some cases as well, we may need to collect other documentation such as certification of SIPA compliance. Those are going to be in very rare cases, but we might anticipate that could happen with some of the eligible entities that might move forward through the process.
One of the things that we want you to be familiar with is this fluid review system. Essentially, it was one of the tools that we decided to utilize to collect all the information in one location, to be able to conduct the review process, to be able to do the ranking and scoring, based on a rubric or based on some kind of review system. And then provide a lot of automated, responses and emails and things of that nature. So this is a system we chose. Essentially, again, the link is here at the bottom, khovhsn.fluidreview.com. When you land on that page, you're going to get some additional information about where we are in the process, what is currently ongoing. You would actually need to right here it's saying edit mode, but there should be a sign up button in the top right hand corner or somewhere on the beginning of the page on the right hand side. And so if you haven't already done so, you can sign up for an account and actually begin to apply for some of these sites. So we've had several already come in, obviously, and we're expecting several more to come in over the next couple days, next couple weeks. But the system, at least the pre-validation and site information form, is rather painless, where it's kind of just doing a little bit of fact-finding. We're asking, some questions regarding, assessment experience, as well as some basic information about site connectivity. And again, this is what we're going to need to make decisions about where folks are going to start falling in terms of, are you eligible or ineligible for some of these funds. Again, the pre-validation process, which is that self-nomination / site information form, again, it's basic. Once this step is completed and if the school meets the eligibility requirements, it'll trigger a step 2. You can find some information on how to fill out or how to submit information through Fluid Review if you take a look at this link right here, which is on our K-12HSN website. So it's just some PDF instructions on what to do, where to fill in information, and what they're asking for. Again, we're recording this webinar, and so either this one or the afternoon session is actually going to get placed on the site, so you can go back and look at these links as well, and if you want to hear back anything that we mentioned, you can do that. But this link is here, and I believe we'll actually be sending out some instructions after this, which may include this via email. Again, the full validation, if the site is confirmed, there's going to be a much more detailed validation process that takes place. We mentioned the LOA, and that's going to allow K-12HSN to potentially procure services. And again, the link here, for redundancy purpose, to make sure everybody has it, is k12hsn.fluidreview.com. If we have time, we may try to actually give a brief demo or introduction to the site, but we're going to continue on with the presentation for the time being.
If I may add on the full validation, it's important to note that the county offices of education are going to take a lead role in the validation process. So it's important to make sure that there's a collaborative effort. We are working with our county offices to make sure that they are reaching out to the sites and have support to those school districts and school sites within their county.
Some of the things we've already covered in terms of ranking and funding. If insufficient funds are available, there's going to be a priority ranking system that's going to be applied until all funds are exhausted. So obviously that is a situation in which maybe we have a large swath of eligible sites and the $26.7 million may not cover. If that is the case, then we're going to go based on priority ranking. The ranking is going to be conducted by K-12HSN and other technical leads across the state, as well as the California Department of Education. And during this process, industry experts, particularly from CNIC, are going to be helping design solutions and determining implementation costs for some of these priority sites that get floated up to the top. In terms of, that process, scenic is going to begin engineering solutions and for some of these eligible candidates based on that validation information. Again, applicants are going to have to provide that LOA to actually do this process. Awardees are going to actually have to say, I accept the grant funds and provide signed assurances of some conditions that we need to actually take care of up front, so to speak. And the current thinking is that awardees are expected to pay for recurring connectivity costs for those ongoing things that are based off of these one-time funds, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think that's very appropriate. And I think the last bullet point is part of the bullet 3. The part of those assurances that mean that the site understands that there are ongoing costs. And as a program, what we are shooting for as we go through this process, certainly try to look at cost-effective solutions. And again, leveraging the subsidy programs such as CTF so that the solutions are affordable as we move forward. There's also an expectation to a certain degree that the grant helps with the one-time cost, which in most cases or in certain cases could be a high cost, and with the goal of wanting to make the connection available to the school site at a reasonable price and market conditions that are appropriate to the market conditions within the area.
In terms of a timeline, some of the documents that you either receive prior to this session or will receive afterwards will indicate some of this in a much more detailed fashion. But essentially, we are in September, so right now we're in this pre-validation phase where we're asking for site information or self-nominations. That is essentially going to end on September 30th. At the same time, project planning and engineering will begin to explore potential solutions and to basically identify and potentially obtain cost estimates for some of these solutions and figure out if there's ways to leverage existing infrastructure or determine what solutions may be available. Full validation will begin in October, and it's actually probably ongoing between September. It ends October 10th. We're putting it in an October window. And then afterwards, scoring and ranking of all eligible sites will begin. And so again, we're going to take all the information from the full validation as well as what was submitted to us in the pre-validation round and work up a ranking system so that we can identify those sites with the highest need. In the fall, at some point, the grant awards are going to be announced. Funding recommendations are going to be made after approval and review and approval by the CDE and the State Board of Ed. And then project implementation is going to begin between the fall and June of 2015. So fall of this year and end of June of 2015. In there's going to be continuous communication, so you're going to receive notices from us. So some of the things that we mentioned before. The system is going to send triggered emails once you move from one round to the next or when you submit something. And so please be aware that some of those things may be coming in. If you haven't seen some of those, let's say triggered responses or automated email messages come back to you, they could be getting caught inside your spam folder or your filter. And so we want you to be aware of that. We're going to try our best at K-12HSN to consistently keep everybody in the loop and send additional information and send reminders as well. But essentially this is just so you can have an idea of where we're going in the next couple months. Okay, obviously we're hopeful that some of this is going to make some sites are going to be able to have a significant impact prior to the 2015 testing window, but we know that they may not be the case in all situations.
That's an important point, Eddie. I think that we are establishing a process to identify these sites to try to put forward some solutions. But we recognize that the sites that we're targeting and the sites that will qualify for these funds most likely or rank higher are those sites that are very hard to connect, and there's for a specific reason. Most likely there's going to be a direct correlation of hard to reach areas or geographically isolated areas. So to a certain degree, there are many aspects that are way beyond anybody's control to try to actually implement a solution in place. But from our perspective, we want to make sure that there's a process that has been developed, identified, and at least the resources are there to move forward with the solution, as Eddie mentioned.
You will find some resources on our website. So right there, you'll be able to locate the school site eligibility list. I don't know if we touched on this a little bit earlier, but essentially when we went out to the County Office of Education across California to provide us sites that they thought were in severe hardship or may potentially qualified, we came up with this list, or the school site eligibility list. That essentially is going to change, and that is the reason for the self-nomination. Some sites were not included potentially, or some sites may fall off the list based on some of the information we received from the site information form. But that list is going to be available on k12hsn.org. You'll also find information, kind of a much more visual representation of our priority chart. So we went through some of our priorities during today's session, but you can actually see that and actually have a document to print off and have for yourself or look at. You'll also find frequently asked questions, as well as links to the fluid review system, and there will be a link in the next day or two to this recorded webinar, so that you can go back or share that with other sites or districts if they want to hear some of this information. Okay. So if you don't already do so or haven't already over the last couple of weeks during this process, we're going to encourage you to visit K12HSN for some of the updated information, as well as look for some communications from us via email, as well as some of those automated responses that are coming from the fluid review system as well. So, just to be cautious and be aware that some of those things will be coming in. And if this is obviously pertinent to you, we want you to, be aware and keep on track with some of that stuff.